But first, Chicago won't be losing the Greyhound bus service just yet. Only 5 days before the station was set to close, the bus operator's parent company, Flix North America, announced it's finalizing a lease extension to continue business as usual on a month-to-month basis. For now. Well, as of yesterday afternoon, the extension has not been signed, so it's unclear what's next. To get the latest on the story, we are in the studio with Chicago Tribune transportation reporter Sarah Freishtat. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Remind us how we got here in the first place, Sarah. Why was Greyhound going to leave its station at 630 West Harrison Street?
Right, so this has been kind of coming for a long time.
Yes.
A couple years ago, what happened was Greyhound's parent company at the time sold the bus operation to Flix, as you said. But Flix did not buy most of Greyhound's real estate, including the stations. So now the Chicago station is owned by a company called 20 Lake Holdings. Flix rents the space from them, and the lease was set to expire on Sunday.
I see. And so this new property owner, is that part of the issue here, or is anything else happening internally?
It's always hard to say what's going on behind the scenes, but we've been told by the COO of Chicago, John Roberson, several weeks ago. He said Flix had the opportunity to extend its lease at the station under the same terms and conditions it currently operates under. That's what he told us. So that was what we heard from the city. Of course, several years ago, there was talk of maybe the owner of the station looking to sell that property to a developer. That hasn't happened. But at the end of the day, we do know that where we're at now is Flix, as you said, is in the process as of 3 p.m. yesterday, in the process of trying to go on a month-to-month lease to stay there a little bit longer.
Yeah. It sounds very temporary.
They have been very clear that it is temporary. They're still hoping for some kind of longer-term solution. Advocates, Flix, a lot of people have been talking about maybe a city-owned bus station. Obviously, that is, expensive.
Yeah.
There's money tied to that. But yeah, there's definitely still a need for something a little more permanent than this.
For sure. And we'll get into some solutions that have been floated so far. But let's talk worst case scenario for just a moment. What will it mean for Chicagoans if at some point, Sarah, we do lose access to Greyhound services in Chicago? Who would be impacted by the station closing?
Right. So advocates have been raising alarm bells about the impacts of this for months. We know that the passengers who use this station in Chicago are predominantly low income. We know Greyhound serves people who are trying to get to or from, maybe smaller communities that don't have train service. They don't have airports, but they are served by buses. We also know that Greyhound is used by, and intercity buses in general are used by women traveling from out of state to Chicago for reproductive care.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So there was a lot of fear, a lot of alarms raised by advocates that all of these people would be really harmed by the loss of a station, because the loss of a station could mean, cuts to service, dropping people off on the side of the road, things like that.
Yeah. If the Greyhound station closes, Chicago will become the largest city in the Northern Hemisphere and one of only 3 of the 130 most populous cities in the world to not have an intercity bus terminal. That's huge.
Right. It's and Chicago.
It's unthinkable almost.
And Chicago's a transportation hub, right?
That's what I mean. Yeah. What? No Greyhound in Chicago?
Right. So, the station closing wouldn't necessarily mean Greyhound would leave, but it certainly would mean scaling back service. It would make it harder to transfer between buses, between bus lines, all of the things that make Chicago a transportation hub.
Right.
And there was a lot of fear, in other places where this has happened, we have seen that Greyhound has instead, when their station closes, they've instead, moved to curbside pickup and drop off, often far outside the center of the city.
Been there.
Yeah.
Not fun.
And then you have
but you do what you got to do.
You've got people waiting, to transfer or for a ride or whatever their next step is, potentially hours out on the sidewalk. No shelter, no amenities, no restrooms. It's hot in the summer. It's cold in the winter.
Exactly. So any whispers and any rumblings that you're hearing at all about how temporary this might be?
Believe me, I've asked.
I'm sure you have.
Flix is
tight-lipped.
Yes, yesterday they declined to answer that question. You know, I think we'll have to wait and see maybe what some of these longer-term solutions are.
Tell us more about the response, overall, and what it's been like to the announcement of this Greyhound station vacating that Harris Street location.
The response to the announcement yesterday was overwhelmingly positive. Aldermen, advocates, the city, everyone was relieved. But, like we said, it's temporary. So there is very much, again, advocates are really pushing for a dedicated space with a shelter, with amenities for passengers.
Yeah. So let's talk more about those alternative sites that you mentioned earlier. What's been proposed so far?
So one option that did get a lot of traction earlier on was to move bus service outside Union Station. Greyhound already does some pickups and drop-offs there. They have a ticket counter nearby. But that idea didn't really it got a lot of traction early on. It has cooled off a little bit.
Kind of fizzled out.
Yeah. It got a lot of pushback from Amtrak, which owns Union Station.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have required cutting Greyhound service. It also still would not have solved the problem of having a dedicated, shelter with amenities for passengers. So, that there was a lot of talk of that a couple weeks ago, but hasn't really gone in that direction.
And you write about a coalition of transit and other advocacy groups hoping that the city would buy the terminal outright and just lease it back to bus lines.
That was also a hope. We have heard that the city, did some preliminary research into that. It was very, very expensive and ultimately, at least for the time being, hasn't panned out.
That's going to be a no-go. Last week, Alderman Bill Conway of the 34th Ward, which is where the terminal's located, floated the idea to Mayor Johnson to offer up the landing zone for asylum seekers to Greyhound. This site is at Des Plaines Avenue and Polk Street. Does that seem like a feasible solution, Sarah?
So, that the Alderman Conway made the case that site is close by, does offer some of the amenities that advocates had sought. It, like you said, it really just came up last week. It's a little bit newer. I have not heard a lot of chatter about it, and it's a little bit unclear how much traction it has. But it is certainly an idea that has been raised.
Yeah. What has the Johnson administration's response been to all of these developments?
As this kind of lease end date approached and things were really heating up, we do know they were involved in talks, with the property owner to try to work something out. They have said they continue to be involved in the effort to find a longer term solution. But, again, what that solution will be, we'll have to see. You
alluded earlier that Chicago's sort of not the only city having these kinds of Greyhound issues. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so, the situation where Greyhound's parent company does not own the stations, that's common across the country. So in other cities, the stations have closed. Bus service has moved to curbside pickup and drop off. One really high.
Everything that we fear will happen here.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And one really one place that's gotten a lot of media coverage has been Knoxville, Tennessee, where there have been local media reports of riders waiting outside for hours in heat and cold. Sometimes buses are delayed, so they're waiting outside for even longer. They don't have access to food, water, restrooms, a building to sit down.
Jeez.
And so, that is kind of the fear about what might happen here.
So, with all that being said, what will you be watching for as things continue to unfold in Chicago?
Certainly how long this month-to-month lease ends up lasting. Of course, assuming that it does end up being finalized.
Yeah.
And then, what is this longer-term solution? Is there a way to keep buses at their current location? Will they be moving? Is it feasible to continue to have a dedicated bus station here? These are all, big questions that we got to keep an eye on.
Right. And they won't tell you how long temporary means, but it's like, I wonder if there's a sense of when we'll find out, if the lease extension was even signed.
Well, we certainly have to find out in the next couple days because the lease is up Sunday. So
that's right. Somebody's got to make a move.
Yes.
That's Chicago Tribune transportation reporter Sarah Freishtat. Thank you again, Sarah.
Thanks so much.